You are watching Coaching Chats with Marina and Caroline.
I'm Marina Baranowski of the Coaching Marina.
And I am Caroline Day with Safe Data Change. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Great.
I'm going to change my name here because I have to do this permanently because I always do this in the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to put here Safe Data Change. So we have our company's name.
Yeah.
Before we start today, anything going on your end? Is there anything you want to announce to the
I
world?
am so excited. I just did some tweaking and changing of my website, which is also called thecoachingmarina.com. So run over there, take a look at it. It's actually quite beautiful. At least I enjoy it. And it has definitely changed the focus from midlife to just co a crossroads, and all the messaging in there. Give it a read. Send me a message. Let me know what you think. I
Yeah,
definitely want to know.
seriously. I love it. I just took a look and it looked amazing. It really, like, even the first page kind of shows, what people may be going through, going at a crossroads and like not trying to understand where they are. So I'm super happy for you. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, always go to thecoachingmarina.com. It looks beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you, darling. And do you have anything to update? I'd love to hear yours.
I do. So we just had our first webinar on stop living at war with yourself. And I wanted to give people an opportunity to watch it. The feedback that I got was that I really want to go, but I don't have time. Or it's in a time because the first one was at noon Pacific time. So the second one will be on the 24th of February at 5:30 Pacific time, not 5:30 p.m. And so people will have a chance to watch it after work, or even people on the East Coast, if they want to watch it, it will be at 8:30 p.m. So I'm excited.
I'm excited for you. Absolutely. It is wonderful, by the way. Everyone must join.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, today we're for those people who don't know, Marina and I met at the Jay Shetty Certification School. We both got certified. We're life coaches, and we come here once a week to bring up topics and cover some topics that we as coaches talk about with our own clients. And the topic today is accountability. So, Marina, how do you feel about accountability? What's the
I
first thing that comes to mind when you say account?
Accountability, really? No, listen, accountability really is a very it's when you get really honest with yourself. And it's something that I highly recommend to absolutely everyone. Like when you're taking accountability for yourself, first and foremost, because accountability ranges in various ways. But when you take accountability for yourself and your actions, it actually moves you forward. When you're discussing, blame, let's just say, blame looks backwards, where accountability looks forwards. And I'd love to really get into that with you.
Yeah. Why do you think yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about what it
Yeah,
is.
let's talk
We'll
about what it
talk
is.
about the feelings towards accountability,
Yeah.
right? Because people get that really mixed up. And, there's a difference between responsibility and accountability, right? When you're responsible for something, you're assigned to do a task or an action, right? But accountability means to be accountable for whatever it is that you're doing. So, for example, you're accountable to do your taxes, but you can delegate responsibilities for somebody else to do the taxes. But if something goes wrong, you are essentially accountable for it, right? And so, accountability, it has some to do with responsibility, and people kind of misuse that word a lot. Um, but there's also a lot of feelings related to accountability. So that's why I asked you, when you think of accountability, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Um,
Thing that comes to mind. And it depends on really what time of my life I was going through. When I talk about accountability, the immediately was like, that means I actually have to place blame on myself. I actually have
Mhm.
to, come up with, the things that I should be accountable for. That's a hard thing to discuss. That would have been my initial feeling about taking accountability. Puts a lens of judgment, that puts a lens of, like that was the overall feeling of it when taking accountability
Yeah.
initially, for
I
sure.
can see how that's relatable too. People think, accountability is related to who can I blame this for? And therefore, like, am I going to be blamed for? Like, if I take accountability and something goes wrong, am I to be blamed for? And
Right,
so that's why accountability comes with all of the feelings of uncertainty, fear, right? I don't want to be accountable for this. It's too much of a responsibility to be accountable for this.
right,
Um, Even though we go in our lives every day, we have rules and regulations that we are accounted for. And at the workplace, both you and I have been at a corporate jobs before where we had responsibilities, but depending on the hierarchy or where you were, if you were a manager, if you were a director, then you are also accountable for, your program or certain things that you do. For you, I'm sure when you put a signature on a piece of document, all of a sudden you're going to be accountable for that,
absolutely.
right? And so when the level of responsibility increases and when you become the owner of certain things, that brings a lot of fear to people because our minds, right, anticipate a lot of bad could happen, right? We start anticipating all of the possible or the possibilities of events that can happen that can lead to losing it or something happening to you related to whatever it is that you own. And so I think that that's why accountability is so hard. But tell us, Marina, why we wanted to talk about accountability in the first place. What's the importance of learning accountability?
When you start with self-accountability, it lends to all avenues of your life, whether it be work or within your relationships and stuff. So by learning how to be accountable for yourself, and I mean that on many different levels, you can be accountable for the way you feel, the accountable for your actions, you're accountable for, how you present yourself, just all the levels of accountability, and it becomes your owner. You become the owner of yourself by being accountable to yourself. So this is a very huge piece of the puzzle when it comes to trying to figure out where you go next in life.
Yeah. So when you said back then, right, like
Yeah.
a few years ago or even a decade ago, um, what I felt towards accountability was more, would you say fear, like guilt or fear of being blamed,
All of
right?
the above. When you follow the flow of what accountability was at that time, let's just take an example of you're doing something that you really need to step up for, but you're procrastinating or you're just not doing what you're supposed to do, and someone calls you out on it. Someone says, "Oh, I think you were supposed to do this. You haven't done it." All of a sudden, this internal emotions start rising up. You could get upset that someone called you out. You could get angry about it. All of these emotions can start coming up. But what is all of those emotions trying to explain to you? They're basically saying that, listen, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And someone calls you out on it. It's a judgment. It's something that, you have thinking very negatively when it comes to that. If you've already gone through your your accountability list or your accountability pause, as I like to take it, and you go, okay, I should have really worked out, or I really should have done this report for work, or I really should have done this. I'm going to just, sneakily work around it and hope that I don't get caught. And if I get caught, I'm going to get in trouble. And if I get in trouble, then there's judgment. And if there's judgment, then someone's going to think negatively about me. And if someone thinks negatively about me, then I'm going to think negatively about me. So you're following this negative path, but it all starts with accountability.
Okay, so can you give us like a more concrete example so that like our audience can understand? For example, what would be a case where if you don't do something that you can be called out for, and what's the feeling like?
If you're talking about it from like a um, self perspective, um, let's just take for me losing weight is something that is important to me. I don't have anyone else that I am accountable to other than myself, right? So I take this job of taking care of myself very, I could take it very seriously or I don't take it very seriously. Some days I do, some days I don't. Either way, if I don't do the thing that I'm supposed to do and I don't hold myself accountable, what do I end up feeling at the end of the day? I end up feeling bad. I feel upset that I didn't do the things that I were supposed to do, that I'm trying to hold myself accountable for.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of us get into this negative flow when it comes to not holding yourself accountable.
I love that example because it's so relatable. At any weight, I can see people either trying to gain weight or lose weight,
Right.
various reasons, right? And so now when they feel like they are accountable, um, it takes ownership of that, right? Like they set a goal, right? So you're talking more about self accountability, which is you set yourself a goal and now you own it if something happens or doesn't happen towards that goal.
Yeah.
And you're saying, now I'm accountable for hitting that goal. My responsibilities are I'm going to exercise once a week or twice a week or three times a week or 30 minutes every day, or I'm going to change my, eating habits, etc. You're saying that when that doesn't, when the responsibilities are not met, that the person can start feeling, like you said, it can start going into a spiral, if you
Right.
will, right? Because it's a cycle, right? One thing leads to the other. I feel bad that I didn't do it. And then I hear somebody saying something about my weight, and I feel worse about it because I had that and I felt accountable for that. So, what is that like for you?
Well, that's the pain, right? That's the pain. But when you hold yourself accountable, if you take it from a different lens and you hold yourself accountable for your own goal or for your own vision of what it is that you want to get out of life, you are your own boss. So you are now going to change the direction. It's like, I have this goal. I want to lose 5 pounds, or I want to get more fit, or I want to start lifting weights. Like you set whatever that parameter is. And if you don't hold yourself accountable every single day for that, and you start falling aside from it, it really is going to cause negative feelings. You're going to feel less than, you're going to feel like you failed, you're going to feel, guilty for not doing it because you promised yourself. I mean, so all of these negative energies are going to arise by not holding yourself accountable. Okay. So if that's the case, by shifting the thought process and saying that I that's a that that this I'm not going to stay in this negative state. In order for me to actually feel good, I now know that if I need to do all the things that I say that I'm going to do in order for me to feel good. So by keeping that in mind and having that as a reminder, that holds you accountable a little easier than sticking into the negative.
Yeah. For me, it all goes back to values, right?
Yeah.
Especially, and I talk about it in my webinar, Stop Living at War with Yourself, because I think that that's where the war starts. It's you want something, but you're doing the opposite of what you want to do. And
Yeah.
now you start feeling really bad, frustrated, feeling like a failure because you want this, but you're doing the opposite. Or you actually want, there's a lot of people that actually wants to lose weight and it's doing everything and it's still not getting the results and they don't know where it is, right?
Right.
And so more important than setting the goals is to understanding why we want the goals in the first place. Because if you set yourself a goal to go to the gym and you hate the gym, guess what? You're not going to show up. You may start 3 months later, you're not showing up. You have a headache, you won't show up. You have any situation happen in the house, that's going to be the first one to go, right? And you start postponing, canceling, et cetera, because you're not going. And it's not because you're a failure. It's not because you fail to be accountable for yourself. It's because you have set the goal that sometimes you believe you need it because somebody told you you should, because you think you need to. And when we start setting ourselves goals that are more related to what somebody thinks that I should do, society is imposing that I should do. I must go to the gym because all of my friends are going to the gym. I'm the only one that weighs more than them, therefore I need to. And so you take all of these reasons and you justify your goal as opposed to saying, what do I really want? Why do I even want this? Do I even want this? Because maybe you don't want to lose weight at all. Maybe what you want is you want to heal something that happened to you. And when you heal something that happened to you, then your goal is to maybe love yourself in the process, and then create a health goal that actually makes sense. And so people have a hard time with accountability because of that.
Yeah.
Because as soon as somebody says, "Hey, you're not doing it," you feel really guilty because you're so attached to the result, right? And accountability actually really shows um, a lot of fear up front because when you feel like you're accounted for something, all of a sudden you take all of the responsibility. You know, those are the people that are micromanaging everything. Those are the people that are, wake up thinking about it, going to sleep thinking about it. And there's this pressure to perform because you're accounted for something.
Yeah.
And the problem is not trying to do it. The problem is not knowing why you're doing it. So do what you do, but know why you're doing it,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's really important.
That's a really wonderful, wonderful thought process. And from what I'm hearing, it's like uh, taking a personal accountability for something kind of really puts you in the driver's seat, right? It puts you into a place of power, really, not punishment, and that's really like a really big deal. Instead of sitting in it and saying, I'm blaming all of, my whatever's going on someone else, you taking accountability for it puts you back in the driver's seat. It puts you back in the spot of power where you can say, well, I don't have to do those things anymore. I can continue forward. I can make certain choices. And so I don't have this experience anymore, whatever it is.
Repeat what you said. It takes power and not.
Well, I mean, basically saying that uh, personal accountability really is power. Puts you back in the driver's seat, and it's power, not punishment.
I love that. And it's very important for people to know that because that's what they associate it with.
Right,
They associate accountability with punishment, not power.
right,
Happens everywhere. There's the reason why a lot of people fear success is because they have this idea associated with authority that is equal to punishment
right,
instead of authority being now I have the power to choose. Now I have the power to decide,
right. But we
which is
also, and a lot of us have had that growing up. Like that was the way that we operated, that we had an authority figure, whether it be our parent or a teacher or whatever. And, that was, we had to be accountable to them. And it was very rarely, we were very rarely praised for things. It was a lot of that, the negative, the punishment. So we holding ourselves accountable, it was a lot easier to blame someone else. It was a lot easier for me to blame my brother for things, right? Or blame, my friend for something, instead of it going on me, then the judgment and the focus would then be on me and all the things that I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, because there's the punishment, right?
Yeah,
Even hearing that something is wrong, that you did something, it is an act of punishment. And so, because we are born and raised in schools and in our in our families, we are raised to believe that being accountable means there will be some level of punishment if it doesn't happen, and there will be some level of power if it does happen. But that's the human, tendency to always look at what if something goes wrong,
right,
always looking in the negative side,
right.
right? I love what you use there, power versus punishment, because that's exactly what accountability gives you,
Yeah.
right? And so when you grow up with, with siblings, or even when you go to school, they say, this is what's going to happen. And if he doesn't, this is the punishment. And so now people are doing it, and their motives are fear of the punishment. I won't do this because I will get spanked. I won't do this because if I don't, this is what's going to happen to me. And let's be honest, like back then, teachers were, able to do a lot more than now. They were able
Yeah.
to say some things, do some things, and now, fortunately, they're not. But still, they're still punishing in one way or another. And then you go into a corporate job, and the same thing happens. If you don't do something correctly, they're going to retrain you, even though there's nothing on the training that says, like if you do something wrong, I'm going to go back and retrain you, and things like that. And so people get frustrated because if they don't want to take accountability for their work, they don't want to take accountability as kids. They want to immediately blame on someone else because they don't want the punishment.
And there's a good piece here, especially when it comes to most of this, which is what if you did take accountability for something, right? What if you said, yes, this is my fault, or yes, I did this? For the most part, you're not getting praised for that. That's not something you would get praised for. You would get punished for it. So we were taught all of our life to keep our mouths shut or blame someone else because then the heat wouldn't fall on us. So if we try to reframe that now, and you do take accountability for something, if you have some people in your life that you can become accountable to and say, yeah, I did this, or, this is what I did wrong, or, you know what, I really should have worked out today, but I didn't. And I'm just calling myself out. Most people be like, it's all right. There's always tomorrow. Like someone's not going to yell at you, but you're afraid to take that step and actually hold yourself accountable for something. And I'm talking about that's like something very small. What if you do something within your relationship or do something at work that you have to hold yourself accountable for?
Yeah. No, but going back to the example that you gave us, you asked the question, what happens most times when you do say, I did something wrong? Normally you get punishment. However, I must say, because I remember not growing up, because I used to lie a lot about not, it wasn't me, especially because I was afraid of the punishment.
We all did. Yes.
But I do remember when that turned, when I started saying, I'm so sorry, it was me. And I would be the first one to raise my hand. I started to watch something completely different. I started to see my character being built in front of everyone for taking accountability
Right.
or telling other people I'm wrong. And because I'm opening the space for vulnerability, all of a sudden other people are too. And so, yes, there is a punishment momentarily. There may or may not be, right? a punishment momentarily, but in the long run, right? Long term. So short term, maybe there is a punishment. Maybe you will get retrained. Maybe you won't get an opportunity that next year because you did something, whatever it is that you did, right? So short term, there might be a punishment, but long term, what you're doing is you're building character. The more you account yourself for what it is that you did, the more you build character. I started seeing people respecting me because I wasn't lying. I started seeing people saying, you know what, maybe I did too. When you start taking accountability, the power is not only within you, but you actually have the power to open space for other people too. That vulnerability ended up being such an anchor for everybody, where everybody's like, oh, they're saying that they did something wrong. I might as well do too. And so that opens opportunities and possibilities for everybody around you. But it's so hard to do it because of that short-term punishment, whatever that might be.
But you're a wonderful example there. And for the most part, I can't remember seeing that in action until much, much later in life.
Same.
But as a child, even into my teenage years, I never saw that example. And maybe if I had seen that example of someone taking accountability and I might have done the same thing and respected it and wanted to emulate it more. So that's very wonderful that you were able to, to bring that forth and start being accountable that young, so but now that we're, you know, beyond that and past that and now into our adulthood, how can we translate that same energy into our adulthood, into our relationships and into our like workspace?
It's very hard for some people because they're still connected, right? Remember, the body does what feels familiar to them. So if you're always hiding, if you always don't want the accountability because it's too much pressure, because there might be a situation where you were accountable as a kid and you didn't do it, and maybe you got, physically or verbally abused, or something happened in the way that maybe, I know a lot of people that says, I'm never going to speak up again because I spoke up and this is what happened to me. So I'm never going to speak up again. And
Yeah.
so anything can happen at the workplace that they're still going to be mute. They're not going to say anything. And so even though we're all adults now and our audience are, adults, we're still kids at heart, right? There's still that part of us, and it's usually in our childhood that hasn't healed. And so we carry that around all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think in order for people to really want to change that, they need to go inside and say, why is this so hard for me to take accountability on this? My I want to get promoted. That's such a common theme. I want to get promoted, but I don't want to be responsible for X, Y, and Z. I want to be promoted, but I don't want all of these responsibilities. And I think to debunk what the power or the punishment of the responsibilities, because sometimes you have an idea of what they are and you have an anticipation of what they may be, but that can also bring a lot of gifts and a lot of things. But because people tend to go into what's the punishment versus what do I gain the power to do? What does that give me?
Right.
And that's really hard. And sometimes it comes with other things that people see it as punishment. Maybe you start working more, and so working overtime can be a form of punishment, or you see it as a form of punishment as opposed to being good. You
Yeah.
went from training, oh, I'm sorry. You went from training one person to now training 10 people. You went from, having one direct report to having 20 direct reports. And so that all changed because your responsibility, now your accountability changes. And that's a lot of pressure for some.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that not too long ago about the difference. What do we call hard? What we call hard to me, Marina, is really the distance between day one and when you're good at it or when you feel like you can do it. For some people that can hop on a bike and learn in one day, if you ask them, how was it learning to ride a bike? Easy. But if you go on top of a bike on day one and it takes you 1 month to ride a bike and you ask that person, how easy or hard was it to learn to ride a bike? Oh, it was really hard. It took me 30 days. And so really hard is just the time from day one to whenever. But if you start looking at it and you say, this is just day one, and you have no pressure, you don't put pressure at all in learning, then actually the hard will not be the time. The hard becomes really how you imagine that to be. Because if you don't give the first day so much pressure to learn so fast, then maybe you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself, right?
All a matter of perspective. Like you said, when you're asked the person on day one how hard it is, or you're asked the person on, when an expert, they have different varying, it's the same person, but their perspective has changed. The one's on one side of it and one's on the other. So that's a really interesting point on that. And the same thing when it comes to accountability. This is all a matter of perspective. This is, where are you standing in this issue? Are you standing on the side of holding, you're accountable for something, or someone is trying to hold you accountable for something? So that's where you either feel in control of the situation, or that you're actually given control to someone else when it's really an action that you should be doing. So
Yeah.
this is an important thing, especially when we deal with this in our personal, we deal with this in at work, holding ourselves accountable, and then you could be holding someone else accountable for something. So you're talking about two different ends of the spectrum in the same way it's like day one on bike, day 30 on bike. It's you're holding just different views of where this is.
Absolutely. And accountability is really interesting because it does give you the power to choose, the power to decide. And if people only knew that that's what accountability is to make a decision, even if you didn't get the results that you were hoping to get, being accountable is just being able to receive the information.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Say that again, because that is so huge. Yes.
Yeah, being accountable is being able to receive the information.
Yeah.
But receiving the information is not going to make you any different, right? It's not going to change who you are. And people attach the results of being accountable to who you are. So if you don't get a result, then what does that mean as a person? Because they attach their identity to the result of this action. And so it's a lot of pressure when you're trying to be accountable for something because now you kind of become that thing. And so if that thing fails, you failed,
Yeah.
right?
But you said it so great, because it's like when you receive the information, I'm receiving information that I am not doing something, I'm making someone unhappy, let's just say. I'm making someone unhappy, and they express that to me. That is a piece of information. What I do next is where the accountability steps in. I can either be accountable for that and say, I'm sorry, I want to make this better. How can I make changes going forward so this doesn't happen again? Right?
Mm,
Or I could, or I could look at it and go, someone is saying that I'm doing something wrong and I'm going to shut this down, or I'm going to be argumentative, or I'm going to yell back and say, well, you did this to me.
yeah.
The accountability piece is what you do next.
Oh, I like that example a lot. The first thing that I would say on your example, and the example was if you did something to somebody or if you make someone sad, I just want to rephrase that because nobody can make you sad. Nobody can make you angry. Nobody has the power to do anything to you. But we do believe that,
Yeah.
especially when we're in the middle of something in a relationship. We think that other people have the ability to do something to us,
Right.
right? Um, and when they bring it up, that's what's happening. You yelled at me, you did something to me, right? That's how it's presented.
Right.
And that's
Made me
why
feel
people
something.
automatically don't want to take accountability for what they did because you are putting the accountability that is supposed to be yours onto them. We don't say, hey, I'm hurt because you did something and I received it this way. Because if you did, the person will be like, oh, okay, they received it one way. Let me explain to them what I did, and I can understand how they received it. What was the impact? The thing is, we take our accountability and we try to put it immediately on someone else.
Yeah.
Look, you did this to me. And you're
Blame.
saying, oh, they have to take accountability because now they did something to me. But the truth is, that's not how it works.
Right.
We have to take accountability for how we received something. And we can present the information. Look, you did this. I didn't like it. It's not something I want for myself. Is that something that you want to keep doing?
Right.
Because there's a difference there, right?
Yes.
What somebody does, it's their action and their thing. They can't hurt me. They can hurt me only if my perception of what they do is hurtful,
Right.
right? And which is, we can go on and on about this topic, right?
Honestly.
Because it's a very touchy topic. Some people would say the opposite. It will be like, no, if somebody hits me, then they really hit me. Yes, that's true, but we interpret it as hurt,
What
hitting is
caused that
hurt, right?
reaction? Where did that come from?
Right.
It didn't start with you being hit. It
And I'm not
started.
saying it's good,
No,
by
I'm
the
just
way.
no, but I mean there's a certain, you know, step by step process that happens here. If you're upset about something and the only way to communicate it is physical, this we're talking about a verbal communication.
Right.
And
Yeah.
in that verbal communication, even if as small as it might be, if someone brings something to you, what you do next is where it separates from going into the blame route or going into the accountability route. I'm not going to turn around and go, well, yeah, you did that. I did that. Well, you did this to me last week. Or, this is always something that you do. And the next thing you know, you end up being in some sort of fight by staying and stopping. This is the accountability pause that I'm talking about. When you pause for a moment and you really listen to what the person is trying to say to you, then you could stop and go, all right, thank you. Thank you for letting me know that this is how you felt. What are the next steps? And these are all within your control. This is where taking accountability and going, I can't change anyone else. I can't make anyone else feel something different. But what I can do is I can change my own actions. And that's where accountability is huge here.
Right. And when you're taking your accountability for your own actions, sometimes that helps the person see that they too have an accountability there,
Yes.
right? It's not just, oh, you did this to me, Marina, and you go, oh, I'm sorry. Now you're taking accountability. Not really. You're sorry for something you did, and maybe for how I felt, but I have to be sorry also for myself for receiving what you said to me that made me hurt, right? Because I have to be accountable for some of it too,
Right.
right? The work that I do actually, I do say things like, I forgive myself for buying into the misunderstanding that you wanted to hurt me.
Yes.
Nobody can hurt me. The truth
Right.
is, nobody can hurt me. And then I go, I forgive myself for buying into the understanding that Marina was doing something to hurt me. The truth is, she can never hurt me.
Right.
So there's accountability on both sides. It's really
Definitely.
accountability on your misunderstandings of life. And there's accountability for other people,
Yeah.
for other people's doings, right? They did that. That doesn't mean they hurt me.
Right.
I hurt myself by listening to it and thinking X, Y, and Z. And I thought that she meant X, Y, and Z. That's the hurtful part,
Right.
right? It's not really because we're all humans. We're all going to make mistakes. Things are not going to work. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
Failing
Yeah.
is leaving, right? So we're just here to learn. We're here to do things wrong and redo it and try to do it again, right? But it becomes much easier when the accountability is literally a piece of message.
Yeah.
When you take the
Especially.
power to decide what that message is, that's when you can move forward. And that is anywhere,
Right.
a relationship, anywhere, right? The example that you gave between two relationships, when somebody says, hey, I'm done, this is what you're doing. You can listen to me or you cannot listen to me. This is what the issue is for me. They're taking accountability to say, this is where I draw the line.
Yeah.
This is my boundary. This is what I'm able to accept. The other person can either run, right, by attacking them, like you said earlier, instead of taking accountability for what they did. They because the truth is, a lot of emotions get washed off, right? Memories of the past, of people saying, I'm done with you for whatever other reason, right? And instead of arriving to the moment and leaning into the discomfortability, right? Because when somebody says, I'm done with, like, this is it, I don't want anything else, it hurts. It hurts. There are all the feelings involved. What does that mean? You two did something. I'm not the only one on this. But if you lean in and go, wow, this is what happened to you, I hear you. This is what happened, I take the information because that's the accountability part, right?
Exactly.
Pausing and taking the accountability, and accountability means just the message. I hear the message. I hear the message, and I'm sorry that this is the message you're getting. And I'm sorry that that's the impact of the message. And what you did to the message is very hurtful. And I have compassion for that.
Yeah, and that is a perfect place to stand in when you're dealing with someone who you care about, especially in a relationship, and someone that you love and that you care about is saying that they are feeling, hurt or want to leave or whatever their complaint is at that moment. It may be a small one or a big one. Either way, it's important for if they're telling you, then it is important to them on some level, and to take a breath and actually listen to what it is that is being said, not the details. It's the emotion behind it. What is being actually said? If you pay attention, you'll actually catch what they're saying. In that same example, when I'm done, I have had this conversation with you a million times. I am upset when you do this, or I don't like this when this happens, and I keep telling you that this is what how I feel. And when your reaction is either to ignore it, push it off, or lay blame someplace else, the issue is not being addressed. You're not taking accountability for your part in this relationship. There are two people in this relationship. There may be more than two, but let's just say that there's two people in this relationship. You have to take accountability for your actions, good, bad, or indifferent, on both sides and say, you know what, you're right. I didn't react in the way that I really should have at that moment. But I will tell you, I felt attacked or I felt this. When you explain how you're feeling to each, so each side understands where you're at, you've set the table so both of you can take accountability for your pieces of the action of what happened there. Instead of putting the blame and putting so much emphasis on the other person that they're doing wrong, just to spare you the uncomfortability of saying that it was your fault. It doesn't have to be a fault thing. This is two people who acted in a way that may not have been in the best interest of the thing that they call the relationship and
Yeah.
taking the onus of it.
And you don't have to wait until that moment, by the way. You don't have to
No,
wait,
definitely not.
right? Like sometimes
Definitely
if
not.
somebody says, I don't like when you do this to me, right? And think of it like when I think of accountability, I think of you holding a pink paper and I'm holding a blue paper. When I say, hey, you did this to me and I don't like it, I'm giving you the blue paper. When you take the pink paper and throw it on me, I'm like, where's the blue paper? And you're like, oh no, but yesterday you did this. Now you're handling me the pink paper, but I just give you the blue paper. People just want to acknowledge that blue paper.
Yeah.
If you just pick up the blue paper, the thing is, you are afraid that if you pick up the blue paper, all of a sudden that blue paper is yours. But it's not. It's just the other person. They just want you to see the blue paper.
And
And so if you see
acknowledge
the
and
paper,
validate. Yeah,
exactly.
acknowledge and validate that you actually, that they had emotion, that you have now acknowledged that that's such a thing.
Right.
Sometimes they don't even want you to, apologize or fix it. They just want you, they want to hear that you heard them. And that opens up a whole level of conversation that you haven't had before. And this
Exactly.
is where taking the accountability for that part that you played a part in. It now puts you again, both of you back in the driver's seat on how it is that you want to move forward. You can decide that it's not something that you want for your own boundaries to continue with, or you can say, I want to continue with this. So let's come up with a way that we can move forward. This is where, instead of laying blame to each other, then you're stuck in the past.
Well,
If you're
blame means nobody's taking accountability for their own.
right,
They just want to take their accountability and throw it to somebody else.
right,
You need to be able to take your accountability as piece of information.
right, exactly.
This is a fact, right? Accountability should be just a fact, right?
Yeah.
This is what happened.
Yeah, accountability is not about fault.
This is how it made me feel, but this is really what happened.
Right,
And my boundary does not accept this. Are we willing to work towards it so that this doesn't happen again? It
right,
works for you, it just doesn't work for me, right? And that is a very mature conversation, is when you know where you're at and when you can respect the other person where they're at.
right.
And Marina, that's a very good thing to talk about because I think one of the things that happen is normally one person has a lot of awareness and another person in the relationship does not have any awareness of
Correct.
what, right? And so how do you handle this when somebody's so aware of what's going on and the other person is like still in that, you know, shield where they're not willing to be vulnerable. They're not willing to, talk about it, just push it off. You know, I don't want to talk about it now because they're so afraid of what's going to happen.
I was that. I did that for decades. Just, but again, you said the right word, which is willingness. It wasn't until I was willing to start looking at the things that were difficult, then I was able to open up my own mind to my own accountability of things. So when you are the other partner and you know that your partner, your spouse or isn't taking or have any awareness, it's most likely times that that's not going to happen. You're not going to um, get that person or force that person to have the awareness that they need. The only thing that you can do is set your boundary, and you can say, here is where I stand on this. Here's my opinion. I don't like this. I've mentioned it a million times before, or we've had many conversations. I feel ignored. I feel, whatever, you can express what you need to express. It is now up to the other person to either meet you where you're at, come to the table and say, let's talk about this, or they can make the decision moving forward to not be there. anymore. But
Yeah.
you have to set your own, as your own personal, your own boundaries and take, accountability for whatever it was that went on. And you have to decide because you can never force someone else to come to the table with it, in my
Yeah.
in my experience anyway.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I must say, like, I did not grow up in a house where we would apologize fully. It
Yeah.
was always, I'm sorry, but you did this. I
Yeah.
didn't want to hurt you, but you gave me no choice. And so when I married my husband, I don't know if I've told you that story, stop me if I did, about him teaching me how to say I'm sorry.
Say it. I love it.
He was, I think we were fighting about something, and he said, I'm sorry. And I go, no, that really hurt my feelings. And he's like, I can see that. I'm sorry. And I said, don't do that again. I'm so hurt. I understand. I'm sorry. I won't do that again. And I started, because that's the only thing he came back at, I started thinking, oh my gosh, like, that's pretty amazing. I can't believe he can do that. And so 5 minutes after the fight, I go, can you teach me how to do that?
Yeah.
Like, I really like how you stand your ground of sorry. And when you really understand the person, that's another way to break that tension because you have so much anger or fear or whatever it is. When the person can hold themselves accountable, there's nowhere else to go,
Yeah.
because there's that power about it, you know, and there's a lot of vulnerability and it takes a lot of vulnerability. And I said, I really want to do that. I want to learn how to say sorry like you do, with no buts about it, with no like stories behind it. And I really like that. And now I'm able to do that. Somebody says it and I go, you're right, that wasn't cool. I'm so sorry.
That's
You know,
beautiful. That's so
because
beautiful.
once you take accountability, that's it. Like there's nothing else. The person can keep coming at you and keep coming at you, but you already took accountability. But
Yeah.
it's so easy because my relationships in the past were you did this, oh, but you did this, oh, but you did this, but you did this. Yeah, but you did this. And then you're like, are you even sorry? You said sorry, but like you have all these reasons. It sounds like you're not sorry. And it's really like you taking accountability for what happened and drawing a line on, I see you. I feel you. That's true. I am here for you. I am sorry. And I thought that that was beautiful. I was like, I need
I
to
think
learn.
that is so beautiful because he's saying to you, he's like, I can see how that hurt you. And you're like, wait, what? I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to say how, why and how. I don't have to do that. I found the same thing with my husband where, we would be able to say that. Oh, I didn't do that. And I just want to let you know I'm sorry for that, and we didn't even have to argue about it. We know each other enough to know what would be upsetting, and we can say, I'm just gonna call myself out here, and just be able to say, I'm gonna call myself out just so you know. And that again, you just and with no judgment and no pretense, it's just here it is. I know this is something that might upset you, and I just wanted to give you the heads up and give you the courtesy and the respect on this thing, whatever it
Yeah.
was. And
Yeah.
it's just so nice, to be
Oh,
able to do that. It is so beautiful.
it
I
really
highly
is.
recommend.
Yeah. And it took me a long time,
It
to
does.
be completely honest. It took me a long time. I would
Because you're
do
rewriting old rules.
I am rewriting all generational, And
Yeah,
so sometimes I would do something and then I would say it just later, not at the time. And he would say, oh, that's okay. And I would say, that's actually not okay. And I don't even want you to say that that's okay because I don't want my brain to think that this is okay.
right,
It's not okay. And if I do it again, I need you to tell me that that's not okay.
right.
Don't teach me that this is okay because it's not. I
That's very
really want,
beautiful. Highly
you know,
recommend. Yeah.
yeah.
I
But
love
that's what
that.
accountability is, right? That's taking accountability is a beautiful thing. It's really
Definitely.
learning how to navigate your own actions because that's the only thing you can do, right? In the relationship, it's really when you are talking about yourself, it's your own actions that you're navigating, that you're identifying, that you're discovering. But for the other person, when the other person is trying to hold accountability for you, don't take it as their responsibility is your responsibility. What they are accountable for is not what you're accountable for. When they are coming to you, they don't want them to be accountable for their feelings. They want you to be accountable for your actions,
Yeah.
for what you did, not their feelings. They need to deal with it. And guess what? When you're accountable for your actions, they can resolve their feelings sometimes,
It's
right? When you
healing.
it's
It's
healing
healing. It is being able to finally understand both sides and understand that you're validating someone else's emotions when it comes to that situation. And again, this is a very healing thing. I did this, as practice. I went through all of my relationships and held myself accountable on my actions in all of those relationships, whether it would be my children or my parents or my family, my husband, all of these things. I held myself accountable. I held myself accountable in my relationship that has failed, all the relationships that failed. What did I do or not do that, allowed this to grow? Instead, it died. And so I use it as a learning tool so I can move forward in my life and know to never do that again because it didn't produce the result that I wanted, not what they wanted, the result that I wanted. And this is a huge healing moment when you do that.
for sure. And really to know if you're able to change. I
Yeah.
think that's a beautiful thing because sometimes I don't think people do things to be bad.
No.
Most people don't wake up and go, "Oh, today I'm going to hurt somebody verbally." Like it's not like that. And so when they do, and sometimes again, it comes with conditioning. I know I came with a lot of conditioning, right? And so they do something or they say something, it's not really intentional. Most
Right.
times it's coming from their own hurt, it's coming from their own fear, and they end up hurting somebody in despite of what they believe would happen or not happen. And sometimes they're not able to heal right away. You telling me that I said something that hurt you is not sometimes going to be the remedy for me to stop it.
Right.
I might say, I'm sorry, and then tomorrow I do it again. And then the next day I do it again, and you're thinking, wow, like she really must not like me because I'm telling her I don't like it, and she keeps on
Right.
doing it. And I can see that happening in relationships. It's because you're really not stopping the pattern. You're trying to stop what's happening, but you're not stopping the conditioning. You're not stopping the pattern. It takes self accountability for you to stop the pattern so that whatever that behavior can really stop. Because
Yeah.
you telling people to stop is not going to make them stop. It just
Definitely
won't.
not. And you said intention because we all have good intentions, like you said. We all have good, we start out doing something and we have a good intention, but the accountability piece is the gap that's in between the result. So if you have intention, and I think it's like John Maxwell that said that, he was like, the intention, uh, um, what do you call it? The accountability is the gap that's in between the intention. You may set a good intention, but the result of it may have not been that what was the intended, thing. So you take accountability for that, and by saying I didn't do the thing that I needed to do to get the result that I wanted. The
Mhm.
intention was there, just the result didn't come out the way it should have been.
Right. Yeah, accountability for sure plays a
Huge.
role on the result itself because, again, it goes back to the power.
Right.
You give yourself the power to fail or not to fail.
Right.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What do you think about having an accountability partner?
I know that we spoke of this, and I love having an accountability partner because it does something from a mental psychological standpoint. Even though we can frame it as, being accountable to someone, it's really self-accountability. We have someone that we trust and that can guide us and help us. Like what I was saying to you earlier, that it's my accountability partner can't be my mother or someone that I feel that I won't be able to say that I did or didn't do something.
That will
Being
have a bias. Yeah.
right, non-biased. So having an accountability partner is a great way to hold yourself accountable, but someone else has somewhat of the responsibility in trying to help you get to your goal.
Yeah. Because I think, now that we've been talking about accountability, in my opinion, and this is just an opinion, not a fact, but in my
Right.
opinion, there is no such thing as an accountability partner. There is a responsibility partner. So somebody can hold you accountable to some responsibility, right? To show up. Like if you have an accountability partner at the gym, then that person is making sure that you go, but that's not really you being accountable. The goal is really for you to be more fit or lose weight or gain muscle, and that's on you. Like somebody cannot help you with that, but they can help you with the steps. And I think the steps is really the responsibilities that you're right because you're accountable for something. So people say accountability partner, I would say responsibility partner. Like
I
I
like
help
that.
you with the tasks, but really you're the one accountable for what's happening. And one more thing I want to add is, I know I share with a few people here, health is a huge value of mine, and it's a part of my goal in 2026. And I did hire a gym coach this month for me to learn how to use the machines at the gym. I have never used a lot of the machines at the gym because I was always so embarrassed to show up and not know how to use any of them. And I overcame my fears. And, I've been to the gym many times and I've taken all sorts of classes. I normally go to the classes first because it motivates me to do more of the exercises. I always felt like if I go to the gym alone, I would do 7 reps as opposed to 10 because, there's nobody there. And so, but now, I have a gym coach and I'm super excited. If somebody has a question on, some sort of accountability, being accountable for your goals or anything like that, maybe we can, do a topic later on involving values or
Definitely.
how do we set ourselves accountable, as opposed to just these little, today was a very broad topic.
Broad, yeah.
But later on, we can actually talk specifically how do you set yourself goals and how do you make yourself accountable for those goals by setting up small little tasks, that you're responsible for. So
And I love that you actually hired a coach to do that. And I think that's fantastic because it's essentially what we do too, right? We become someone's unintentional, uh, you know, accountability coach. We are guiding them and we're working with them. But essentially, every week that they show up to us, you know, they want to show us that they're there and that they're working. And I think that they being held accountable to the things that you say that you're going to do is a beautiful way and in a healthy way, really, to hold yourself accountable by having someone be that accountability partner
there
for
for
you.
you. Yeah. Wow. The more we talk about, the more I understand my own definition of accountability because for my clients, I am not their accountability coach. I feel more like I'm really coaching them on how to understand themselves. I'm really reflecting their current life back to themselves
Yeah,
so that they can understand, wait, is this really what I'm doing right now? Wow, I never thought about that. Oh, wow, this is how I can change. So I'm really just reflecting back what they're giving to me so that they can see it in a different light, right? But essentially, they are accountable for their own life. They're accountable for their results and they're accountable for everything that they do. So just like the gym coach that I hired, I'm expecting him to teach me how to fish so that I can go to the gym later on and do what I have learned because he taught me how to use the machines. And I help people use these tools that are available to all of us through chat GPT or otherwise.
right.
And later on, they can actually use it themselves. And I think that that's part of being a coach.
Definitely. And just like I was saying, just in that next piece of it, which is I enjoy when my client comes to me and goes, I'm so excited that I got this far because, and being able to have someone to go to be excited too. And this is where the coaching and holding accountability for yourself. Because I like when because I have my own coach, right? I go to my own coach and I'm like, guess what I did this week? Look at amazing. Like you are able to show someone that you are doing the things that are healing and that are good, and that you're seeing growth in yourself, and having someone to share those things with, that is where having this accountability coach or just a coach is good to have. So,
For sure. Oh, that's amazing.
Mhm.
That is a great addition. All right. Well, we'll see you guys
We'll
next
see
time.
you next
Thanks for watching.